By 1956, rock and roll was splitting the country in two. A young musician named Bobby Poe from Vinita, Oklahoma, was doing something quietly remarkable. Then living and based in Coffeyville, Kansas, Bobby was building a band around an African-American piano player named Big Al Downing at a time when that choice alone could close doors, cancel bookings, and invite real hostility. They called themselves the Poe Kats, and they were about to catch the ear of Sam Phillips. Oklahoma and Kansas in the mid-1950s were not Memphis. They were not Nashville. It was not the obvious place to build a rockabilly band, but the music was everywhere, and Bobby Poe heard it. Big Al Downing was also from Oklahoma and was born in Centralia. He played piano with a ferocity that belonged in a different decade, a different city. Bobby Poe invited him in, and the band that formed around them was something unusual for its time. Racially integrated, musically combustible, and completely serious about what it was doing. The Poe Kats also included founding members Vernon Sandusky on lead guitar and drummer Joe Brawley. It was the combination of Poe's drive, Downing's piano, Sandusky's searing guitar, and Brawley's rock-steady beat that gave the group its sound. They came to the attention of Hank Thompson's manager Jim Halsey, who thought the Poe Kats would be the perfect backing band for his new client Wanda Jackson. Wanda was already on her way to becoming the queen of rockabilly, and, without further ado, the Poe Kats became her first rock and roll backing band. They toured with her, and they appeared on her early Capitol Records recordings, including the rockabilly classic, Let's Have a Party. Every member of Bobby Poe and the Poe Kats went on to be inducted into the Kansas Music Hall of Fame, as well as the Rockabilly Hall of Fame. Their first recording was called Rock and Roll Record Girl. It was based loosely on the old standard Chattanooga Shoeshine Boy, reworked into something harder and faster, and very much of its moment. The song caught the ear of Sam Phillips at Sun Records. For a band from Coffeyville, Kansas via Oklahoma, that was extraordinary. Sun Records was the place where Sam Phillips had launched Elvis, Cash, Perkins, Lewis. Rock and Roll Record Girl was good enough to get his attention. But then the legal machinery got involved. Wesley Rose of Acuff Rose, the powerful Nashville publishing house, blocked the release. The standard it was based on created a copyright problem, and by the time the lawyers had finished, Sam Phillips had moved on. He was no longer interested. Jim Lowe, a Dallas radio personality, stepped in. He released the single on his own White Rock Records label. And despite the circuitous route to get there, Rock and Roll Record Girl, backed with Rock and Roll Boogie, became a #1 record in the state of Texas. It was a win, but it was also a lesson in how the music business actually worked. Their next single came with a different name on the label. Bobby Poe recorded as Bobby Brandt, and the Poe Kats became the Rhythm Rockers. Same musicians, same label, same era, but a different identity for a different market. The song was called Piano Nelly. This kind of thing was not unusual in late 1950s rockabilly. Artists recorded under multiple names to sidestep contractual restrictions, to test different markets, to give a song a fresh identity if a previous release had underperformed. The music business was a patchwork of regional labels, local radio deals, and informal arrangements. A name was not sacred. It was a marketing decision. Piano Nelly was released on White Rock Records in 1958. Within months, it was picked up and re-released by East West Records, broadening its distribution. The song had a life. It just lived it under a borrowed name. After 2 singles, Bobby Poe made a decision that might, at first glance, look like retreat. He gave up performing. He had a #1 record in Texas. He and his band had worked with Wanda Jackson. He had caught the ear of Sam Phillips, and he walked away from all of it to become an artist manager with Big Al Downing as his first client. But this was not retreat, it was a different kind of ambition. In the 1960s, Poe moved to the Washington, D.C. area and expanded his operation. He went on to manage and co-produce the Chartbusters, a group that featured his old Poe Kats bandmate, Vernon Sandusky. In 1964, She's the One by the Chartbusters reached number 33 on the Billboard Hot 100, a genuine top 40 hit. Tom Hanks later cited the Chartbusters as one of the influences for his 1996 film That Thing You Do. Poe also co-managed the British Walkers, whose lineup included the legendary blues guitarist Roy Buchanan. Vernon Sandusky, meanwhile, went on to spend more than 20 years as the guitarist in Roy Clark's band. The man from Vinita, Oklahoma, was leaving fingerprints all over American popular music, just not always in his own name. In 1968, Bobby Poe changed direction again. He launched a music industry trade publication called Pop Music Survey, a tip sheet aimed at radio programmers and record industry insiders. In an era before the internet, before streaming data, before real-time chart analytics, these publications were essential. They told radio stations what was moving, what to pay attention to. Pop Music Survey ran for 28 years until 1996, and along the way, Poe built something beyond the pages, an annual convention that became a gathering point for the radio and recording industries. Over the course of its run, the Bobby Poe Pop Music Survey Radio Convention was held 25 times. It is worth pausing on that. A man from Oklahoma who started as a rockabilly performer in Kansas had, by the 1980s, become one of the connective tissues of the American music industry, not as an artist, not as a manager, but as a publisher and a convener. Someone who understood the business from every angle it had to offer. He retired in 1996. Officially, anyway. Bobby Poe died in January 2011 in Grove, Oklahoma, the town where he had spent his later years. He was 77. And then, years later, the music found a new audience. Piano Nelly, the song recorded in 1958 under the name Bobby Brandt and the Rhythm Rockers, released on a regional label, picked up by a slightly larger label, and then largely forgotten for decades, appeared in the Amazon Prime video series Fallout. The show, based on the beloved post-apocalyptic video game franchise, became one of the most watched series of its season. Piano Nelly was featured in Season 2, Episode 6. The song has now been streamed more than 340,000 times on Spotify. Think about what that means. A recording made in 1958 in a business climate where artists routinely worked under false names just to get a release, where a single copyright dispute could derail a career, where regional success was often the ceiling. That recording now reaches listeners every day who have no idea they are hearing the work of a rockabilly pioneer from Vinita, Oklahoma. That is not obscurity, that is a kind of immortality. Bobby Poe spent his career moving between names and roles: performer, manager, publisher, promoter. He was the Poe Kat, and he was Bobby Brandt, and he was the man behind the magazine and the man who booked the conventions. What held it all together was a genuine love for the music and the business around it, a belief that the work mattered even when the credit was complicated. Piano Nelly is proof that he was right.